When I turned 26, the family that had disappeared from my life 16 years earlier suddenly resurfaced. Their unexpected return stirred a whirlwind of emotions, making me question everything about myself. It felt as though I had become an entirely different person. As the eldest child, I grew up in what seemed like a loving home with my two younger siblings, one 3 years younger, the other 5. We shared ordinary family moments, cooking together, watching movies, and playing games. Life felt normal until my father lost his job when I was 9. He was wrongly accused of misconduct and fired unjustly, leaving my mother, who worked as a school staff member, to support us alone. One evening, my parents sat me down, their expressions grave. "We've made a decision," my father said gently. "You'll stay with your grandparents for a little while, just until we get back on our feet." At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. I liked the idea of spending time with my grandparents. That summer, I enjoyed life on their farm, helping with the animals and soaking in the peaceful countryside. But what was supposed to be a temporary arrangement soon stretched longer than I had ever imagined. As the school year approached, my parents reassured me that they were making plans for my return. I waited. Days turned into weeks, then months. Every time I tried reaching out, I was met with silence or vague promises. Why haven't they called? I asked my grandmother one day, anxiety tightening my chest. "They're probably just busy," she replied, brushing it off. "They'll get in touch when they can." But they never did. Desperate for answers, I even tried filing a missing persons report, but my grandparents dismissed it as an overreaction. The harsh truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been abandoned. With no other option, I pleaded with my grandparents to enroll me in school. They eventually agreed, but adjusting to my new reality was anything but easy. Then, one evening, everything changed. I overheard my grandmother speaking in hushed tones on the phone. "Is she doing okay in school?" my mother asked. "She's fine," my grandmother replied. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up." Hearing my mother's voice after so long sent a jolt through me. Without thinking, I ran into the room, my heart pounding. "Mom? Mom, is that you?" Silence. Then, click. The call ended. Frantically, I grabbed the phone, shouting into the receiver, hoping she was still there. My grandmother turned to me, frustration and worry written all over her face. "Go to your room," she snapped. Tears burned my eyes. "Why didn't you tell me? Why have you been lying to me?" She didn't answer. Not long after, my grandparents sent me to live with a distant aunt, someone I had never met before. The reason? I was never given one. My aunt, my mother's cousin, turned out to be a kind-hearted woman. She welcomed me with open arms, and for the first time in years, I felt safe. "I don't know why your parents never came back for you," she admitted one evening. "But I promise, you'll never be alone again." From the moment I moved in with her at 13, she became the mother figure I had lost. She encouraged me to talk about my feelings, even suggesting therapy when she saw how deeply my past had scarred me. At first, I resisted. But eventually, I gave in. Therapy helped me process my pain and understand that my abandonment was never my fault. By the time I graduated high school, my aunt had become my greatest support system. She helped me pursue my dream of becoming a veterinarian, her own profession. At 21, I made a life-changing decision. Sitting across from her, I slid adoption papers across the table. "You've been more of a mother to me than anyone else," I told her. "I want you to be my legal parent." Tears welled in her eyes as she reached for my hand. I'd be honored. With her by my side, I finally found the stability I had longed for. Fast forward a few years, I completed my degree, started working as a veterinary intern, and moved into my own apartment. Though I visited my aunt whenever I could, life felt peaceful. Then, 2 days ago, my past knocked on my front door. Expecting a package, I opened it, only to be met with the faces of the family that had vanished years ago. I opened the door casually, expecting a package, only to come face to face with my estranged parents and youngest brother. Their faces were both unfamiliar and painfully recognizable. I froze. My father spoke first. "We need to talk." Without another word, they handed me a letter from my grandparents. The message inside accused me of abandoning them, refusing to stay in contact, and causing them emotional distress. But that wasn't the real reason for their visit. "We need your help," my mother said. "Your brother's education. It's too expensive. You're a doctor now. You have to help." I stared at them in disbelief. "I didn't run away," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You sent me away. Why should I be responsible for him?" "We don't have anyone else," my father insisted. "If you refuse, we'll take legal action." A bitter laugh escaped me. Legal action? Against the child you abandoned for 16 years. When they refused to leave, I called the police. "They're not my parents," I told the officers. "Legally, I'm my aunt's daughter now." The authorities issued them a warning, but that didn't stop the harassment. My social media was soon flooded with hateful messages from relatives, calling me selfish and ungrateful. When I told my aunt everything, she asked me just one question. "Are you sure you did the right thing?" I didn't know how to answer. A few days later, my parents showed up at my workplace, causing a scene. Security had to escort them out. The weight of their sudden reappearance and their relentless pursuit of money drained me. "Maybe you should talk to them for closure," my therapist suggested. I resisted for a long time but eventually agreed. My aunt accompanied me when I met them. Their explanation was as heartbreaking as it was infuriating. "We sent you away because we couldn't afford to keep you," my father admitted. "And when things got better?" I asked. He hesitated. "We just couldn't afford to bring you back." No, that wasn't the truth. They hadn't wanted to. They were here now for one reason: money. "You're only here because you think I owe you," I said coldly. My mother sighed. "We thought maybe you'd feel guilty." Her words stung, but I refused to waver. "I don't owe you anything," I said firmly. "And if you come near me again, I'll take legal action." Ignoring their pleas for forgiveness, I walked away. I felt nothing for them anymore. If I could erase them from my memory, I would. Time passed. The messages stopped. My so-called family disappeared from my life once more. Meanwhile, I completed my internship and prepared for a new residency program, one that would take me even further from the ghosts of my past. As I studied for my AVMA, American Veterinary Medical Association certification, I held on to hope that my future would be bright. I won't deny that sometimes I wish things had turned out differently. But I had come to terms with the truth. My aunt was the only parent I had ever needed. She had given me more love and support than the woman who gave birth to me ever had. "They abandoned you, lied to you, and left you behind without a second thought," my aunt often reminded me. "You're not being cruel. You're only treating them the way they treated you." A year passed, and just as I thought things had finally settled, a new issue arose. My sister-in-law. She was a few years younger than me, yet I had expected her to show some level of maturity. Unfortunately, I was wrong. The trouble started when I began dating my husband. We met by chance. He had helped me move, and after a conversation at a local bar, we quickly hit it off. Despite how happy we were, my sister-in-law never seemed to approve of our relationship. "My brother never takes anyone seriously," she once warned me. "Don't get your hopes up." I braced myself for the worst. But 6 years later, we were still together, and he was, without a doubt, the love of my life. The rest of his family, his parents and extended relatives, welcomed me warmly. Yet, for reasons I couldn't understand, his sister harbored an unexplained hostility toward me. Her resentment became even more evident during our wedding 2 years ago. Due to her ongoing coldness and constant snide remarks, I chose not to include her as a bridesmaid. She didn't take it well. "If I'm not part of the bridal party, I won't even attend the wedding," she declared dramatically. To avoid unnecessary conflict, I reluctantly made her a bridesmaid. Even then, she arrived wearing a white floral dress, causing an uproar. My in-laws were furious. They gave her an ultimatum: either change or be excluded from future family events. Either you respect our family, or you won't be part of it, they warned. My husband later told me she had apologized. For a brief moment, I thought she had finally grown up. I was wrong. When I found out I was expecting, I was overjoyed. My husband and I couldn't wait to share the wonderful news, and our families were just as thrilled, except for my sister-in-law. Rather than celebrating with us, she constantly shifted the attention to herself. At the family gathering where we made our big announcement, she sighed dramatically. "You're lucky," she said. "I had to go through pregnancy all alone." Despite her self-centered response, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. So when she offered to host my baby shower, I initially felt touched. But things quickly took a bizarre turn when she insisted on holding the event at a venue nearly 1,200 miles away. She claimed it was a surprise, promising that it would be at a luxurious location owned by a friend and that we wouldn't have to pay for anything. But something didn't sit right with me. When I voiced my concerns, my husband tried to reassure me. "She's just trying to do something nice," he said. "I think you're overthinking it." With his encouragement, I agreed to go. I traveled there with my aunt, while my in-laws, who were out of the country at the time, weren't able to attend. The moment I arrived, I knew something was wrong. The venue was stunning, elegantly decorated, but the guests were mostly unfamiliar faces. Then, to my shock, I spotted another pregnant woman, dressed in the exact same white gown my sister-in-law had given me. That's when it hit me. This wasn't my baby shower. She had deceived me into attending a completely different event, for her friend. Humiliated and heartbroken, I left in tears. My husband confronted her immediately. "It was just a misunderstanding," she insisted, feigning innocence. But we both knew better. "She's always been manipulative," my husband admitted. When his parents learned what had happened, they were furious. They had supported her financially for years, but this was the final straw. "We've helped you long enough," they told her. "You're on your own now." She had depended on them to maintain her lifestyle, but now they had cut her off completely. They even warned her not to return until she took responsibility for her actions. Of course, she blamed me for everything. But I never once asked my in-laws to stop supporting her. That was their decision. No matter how much she tried to paint herself as the victim, I refused to feel guilty for the consequences of her own behavior. "She's not struggling," my husband reminded me. "She just needs to learn how to live within her means and manage her boutique properly." If his parents truly believed their grandchild was in need, they wouldn't have let them suffer. They simply wanted her to grow up and take accountability, something she had avoided for far too long. "She needs to stop blaming you," my husband said. "She's had more chances than she deserves." Through it all, he remained firmly on my side. "You don't have to forgive her or even acknowledge her again," he assured me. He even apologized for not stepping in sooner to set clearer boundaries. Thankfully, my kind-hearted mother-in-law took it upon herself to plan a real baby shower for me. A beautiful celebration meant to replace the disaster my sister-in-law had orchestrated. "We'll make sure this one is perfect," she promised. But, once again, my sister-in-law found a way to ruin things. On the day of the party, everything was going wonderfully. The decorations were elegant, the food was delicious, and we were surrounded by our closest family and friends. Then, out of nowhere, she appeared, completely uninvited. Having discovered the event through social media, she stormed in, seething with anger. "How can they throw you a party while refusing to help me financially?" she shouted, creating a scene in front of all the guests. That was the final straw for my mother-in-law. "That's enough," she said, her voice calm yet firm. "You're leaving." She escorted her out and apologized to everyone for the disruption. Afterward, my in-laws repeatedly expressed their regret over her behavior. They even suggested I consider legal action against her. While I'm hesitant to take things that far, My husband and I have agreed to keep all details about our baby off social media to prevent her from causing more trouble. This entire ordeal has been exhausting, and I can't begin to understand why she is so obsessed with competing with me. Out of sheer jealousy, she ruined not one, but 2 baby showers. I do know that my in-laws were not initially supportive of her pregnancy because she had a child out of wedlock, which clashed with their traditional values. Though they eventually came around after the baby was born, it's obvious she still harbors resentment. Since the shower, I haven't heard from her, and my in-laws have made it clear they're done with her manipulative ways. Frankly, I don't care anymore. I just want to move forward and focus on my baby. She's unbelievably entitled, my husband said, shaking his head. I couldn't agree more. She has repeatedly shown that she's manipulative, selfish, and unwilling to change. I refuse to waste another second thinking about her.